Hello, my name is Thomas Atkinson, and today I will be presenting to you the information that I learned about TBI, or traumatic brain injury. A traumatic brain injury is an injury to the brain caused by the head being hit by something or shaken violently. This injury can change how a person acts, moves, and thinks. As teachers, we might need to be in contact with students who have TBI, and we need to be able to communicate with them in the classroom and make sure that it's a very safe environment and friendly environment for them to learn in. In order to completely learn about TBI, we need to know about the many different aspects of the brain in order to understand it better. The cerebellum is responsible for movement, coordination, muscle tone, depth perception, communication, and other motor skills. This is basically any thoughtful movement that we make, whether it be moving our mouth when we speak or moving our legs and arms when we walk. Because if it's placed at the back of the head, it's less likely to be injured in an accident, but it is still possible, unfortunately. Signs of the injury to the cerebellum include loss of coordination, loss of depth perception, sluggish movements, movement tremors, weak muscles, and slurred speech. The frontal lobe is very complicated, and it's responsible for many vital activities. A lot of scientists are split down the middle about what the frontal lobe actually does, but all scientists do agree that it is the emotional hub of the brain. This is where we feel, this is where this is how we get emotional. But it's also responsible for fine motor control, divergent thinking, nonverbal speech, verbal speech, and assessing information, whether it be through the environment or somebody standing in front of us giving us social cues through verbal or body language. Because of its placement right at the front of the head, it is the most likely out of any other part of the brain to be damaged or injured. Signs of injury to the frontal lobe are loss of fine motor controls, rigid behavior, they're not as relaxed or as easygoing as they used to be, difficulty to interpret surroundings, whether that be the environment or somebody in front of them. They're taking more risks, dramatic change in social behavior, whether that makes them more aggressive or paranoid, impaired associative learning, which is learning from somebody else who might have done something wrong or somebody else who might have done something right, difficulty measuring space, and difficulty orienting their body. The occipital lobes are one of the main aspects of the visual system. This is where all information that comes from the eyes gets transformed into actual useful information that our brain can interpret. Signs of damage to the occipital lobes are visual hallucinations, visual illusions, which are just distorted images, defects in the visual spatial processing, and difficulty seeing movements and colors. The parental lobes. They can be broken down into two sections, left and right. One involves the visual system and deals mostly with the spatial issues. So this is more depth perception and things like that. The other is responsible for sensations, perception, and especially cognition. The parental lobes are very important, and if either the left or the right is damaged in any way, it can result in completely different syndromes or completely different symptoms. So if the left lobe is destroyed, it can result in Gertzmann syndrome, which is directional confusion. They're not sure if it's left or right, difficulty with writing, mathematics, and languages. If the right lobe is destroyed, it can result in neglecting self-care, so they might not want to get dressed, or they might not want to brush their teeth, and also difficulty making things with construction. If it's a bilateral, if both areas of the brain are destroyed, then it can result in balance syndrome, which is the inability, some symptoms of this is the inability to voluntarily control the gaze and difficulty processing information about the environment. The temporal lobes. The temporal lobes are responsible for organizing all sensory input. So the eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and nerves on the end of our fingers are all connected to the temporal lobe. Signs of damage to the temporal lobe are difficulty remembering, change in behavior, aggressive and paranoid, and selective attention to sensory information. Whether that be somebody's calling their name and then they might not hear it, or they might not be able to organize the information correctly in their head. The brainstem is another big aspect to the brain. It's the highway for all information to the temporal lobe and others. This is how information enters and exits the brain. If the brainstem is damaged, it can result in a loss of consciousness, difficulty paying attention, and sometimes even death. And because of it's on the bump of the neck, it is more likely to be damaged than any other part of the brain. Students who have TBI or brain damage, they've just recently gotten it. It's impossible to be born with brain damage. So a lot of the students that come into the classroom might not be used to learning the way that they need to now. So it's very important as teachers that we are understanding and respectful of the students' abilities and of the students' limitations. The first accommodation that we can use is to extend due dates on tests, quizzes, or big projects. Provide oral and written instructions, and do not be afraid to break down those instructions into smaller segments, into smaller steps. Allow the students to utilize a laptop. With a lot of the portions of the brain, it can be difficult for the student to do well in language and English. So with the laptop, they have spell check, grammar, and they can also look up information if they need to. Provide visual cues, whether that be through the red light, red, yellow, and green light, whether they're doing something right or wrong, or simply just telling them that they did good, or giving them a picture so to help them study. Allow additional time to complete tests. And then also a big thing that I found is break up the tests and quizzes into smaller segments with breaks in between. This is to make sure that they are not overloaded and simply give up with the test or quiz, which can happen. So with all of these in mind, I think it's important as a teacher that we are respectful of the students with brain damage and are respectful of their limitations and also what they can do. This is my works consulted, and I also used a lot of the websites in the supplementary websites that you gave us. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.